So, believe it or not, I did some more acoustic treatment in here. Go figure. I documented a little bit more of the process, so I thought I would just show you a lot of that. One thing I want to say up front, though, about acoustic treatment. I think acoustic treatment is probably the most important thing for any environment where you're listening. It's probably more important than even the speakers at this point, especially the more of this that I do. But I think it can get a little intimidating sometimes when you're putting together a studio and you're looking at it and you're going, I can't do that. It's expensive. I mean, it's really not if you build the stuff yourself. And I am not someone who is particularly handy at building things. And I've built all of the acoustic treatment in here myself. If you're thinking about doing acoustic treatment and you're making excuses, stop making excuses. It helps so much. The other thing about acoustic treatment, if you've followed me online at all, you know that I didn't build all of this stuff at once. This has been a process. I mean, honestly, the panels that are in here, those are the oldest. I probably built those, 9 years ago, 9.5 years ago. And it wasn't until last fall when I finally made the new ceiling clouds. And since I had leftover insulation, I went and I did this new stuff. Here is a bit of the journey into building these things. So I'm going to do some more acoustic treatment in here. Surprise, surprise. Every day, I'm one step closer to never being finished, modifying my studio. I'm really happy with the way it sounds in here. Like, I love working in here, and it sounds great. But I kind of wonder if I could maybe tame some stuff with the low end a little bit more. It's really good in here right now, but, I look at a waterfall plot of what's going on in here, and some of the low frequency stuff, it just hangs around a little longer than I would like. So I've got some leftover insulation, some Safe and Sound. It's been in my garage for, 6 months, I guess, from when I did the new clouds last year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build some kind of corner traps, I guess. But I'm going to do it across the corners of my ceiling. So I'm going to have to take all of my stuff down so that I can try and mount these up and see how much of a difference it makes. I don't think it's going to make as big of a difference as the new clouds did, because those really tightened things up. I could be wrong, though. I mean, I'm putting a bunch of insulation in here, but I'm not expecting it to have as big of an impact just because of where it is, being in the corners of the ceiling. But I could be wrong, and I'm going to take you along for the ride this time. So first piece is up. We'll see how this works. That was, should have been easier to do, but with my height channel right there, that made it a little more complicated. All right, first pieces are up. And now I'm waiting for some supplies to come in to get the insulation up. Okay, so I've got some fiberglass up. It's the new panels. This isn't necessarily the final construction. I'm going to put stuff up there too. But I've got that done. And I'm just looking at some initial measurements here. And let's see, what is this, the before? So this is the before. All right, there's the after. There's the before. What I'm really interested in the most on this is the sort of resonance, the amount of time that some of these are hanging out. So when I go to the new one, you can see how that starts to tighten up, and that means that those frequencies aren't going to ring as much in my room. So what I'm going to be hearing when I'm mixing is more of the direct sound out of my speakers rather than stuff that's hanging around in the room, which is really what I wanted to do with this. So far, I guess it is successful in what it's doing. I still got a little bit more treatment to do in here, but I guess it was helpful, and it's looking like it's going to be worth it. So we'll see what actual listening makes me think. All right, so the first part of this kind of frame around the insulation is up. And this is just going to be what the fabric gets attached to. So I got the last of the kind of fabric supports up now, and I moved the insulation around a little bit, and I'm really surprised that I don't really have a lot of sag on it anywhere. It is just sort of staying up there in place. The strapping on this side, I think on the top one, it's like not even really putting any pressure on that. So that's kind of cool, because that means all that strapping it's almost there as just a safety, which I kind of like the idea. So I'm not too worried about this stuff falling out now. So I just need to get some fabric on this stuff now, and then probably put some trim around the edges to cover the staples, and these will be done. Everything is up except for fabric at this point. So all the insulation is up, and the frames and everything. And it was not the easiest thing in the world to do. That's for sure. Making regular acoustic panels is much, much easier. I thought I'd talk a little bit about how I constructed these, because I don't see a lot of information anywhere about kind of building these sort of corner traps on the ceiling. And I did reach out to Jeremy from Recording Studio Loser. He gave me some helpful advice. I didn't build them exactly the way he built his for his new Atmos room, but definitely gave me some inspiration. So thank you so much, Jeremy. That was a big help. So basically, what I did was I constructed these kind of triangular side pieces. I didn't want to mount anything into my ceiling. The problem I have in this room is my joists run the length of the room, so I can't easily mount into them for this kind of stuff. Like, I mounted into the joists for my height channels for Atmos, but for these pieces, I didn't want to deal with putting anything into the ceiling, because I would have needed to use like toggle bolts or something like that, and I just didn't want to put more holes in the ceiling at this point. So I made these triangles, and I kind of just mounted them to the wall with L brackets. The problem I ran into that I should have seen coming was when I put the strapping up to kind of hold the insulation, that's like these white pieces here. When I put that up, since it's not solid pieces, it's like a polyester pallet kind of strapping thing, and it's rated for some crazy amount of weight. But to tension that between the two sides of it, it puts a lot of tension onto those corner pieces. And since those like side pieces, I should say, since those side pieces aren't, they're not secured to anything, or they weren't initially, it was adding too much tension to them. Maybe if I had used 2x4s instead of 1x4s, it would have been better. But since that was pulling in, I ended up needing to brace them. And I just used the cleats that I already had up in my ceiling that the height speakers are mounted on. I was able to attach the kind of tip of those side pieces to like those pieces that were already mounted to the joists. So that gave me enough strength that I didn't run into issues. So I put the side pieces up, and then I put a couple of pieces of the strapping across, and then I put the insulation in, and then I did the top part of the strapping. And then I got these wood pieces that are up there right now that you can see, and those are just 1x4s. I use 1x4s for all of this stuff. I just took those 1x4s, cut them to size, and then I glued them and nailed them with a nail gun up there. And those pieces are basically just going to be what I use to attach the fabric to. But when I got those up there, they kind of took most of the weight of the insulation, which was really nice and not necessarily what I was expecting. So all of that kind of strapping that's up there now for the insulation, it's more just as a safety measure. That insulation's not going anywhere, I don't think. Not anytime soon anyways. So now I'm just waiting on fabric. I'll take fabric and staple it to that kind of 1x4 frame that's there, and then I'll just go get some trim and put it around like another sort of frame around it, just to kind of cover the staple holes from stapling the fabric up there, and then these should be done. So I think my fabric, I'll have the fabric in a couple of days. I need to go pick it up over at GIK Acoustics because they're here in Atlanta. It should be ready for me in 2-3 days, and then I can get that up the next day, and then probably go get the trim and finish these guys off. One more thing I should mention, because I think I forgot to, is the insulation in there. These are not filled completely. There is an air gap behind the insulation, and I've done that with all of the panels in my room, and it's been really effective. And I thought that would probably work better than like filling it all the way to the corner. I could be wrong. I'm not an acoustician. Maybe an acoustician would tell me I probably should have filled it all the way. Don't really know, but so far these are working pretty good. So there you go. Okay, so I did another measurement here. Sorry, I'm just shooting this with my phone because it's just easier. So this is the original waterfall plot for the room. And the stuff that I'm really interested in is all of this stuff down here, down around 60, 70, 80 hertz. So just so you know, the time scale here, this bottom here is 300 milliseconds. Up here where everything's at right now, that's around, probably around 100 milliseconds. So what I'm trying to do with this treatment is to reduce the resonances down here. I'm not worried about this sort of amplitude here. This will all get worked out in the tuning. This was without those corner traps that I just installed. I don't have any fabric on them yet. I'll do a new measurement once I get the fabric all on there to see if that changes anything. So that's what it was. This is where we're at now. So you can see these resonances here, they have definitely shortened. If I go back to the first one, look at that. And I can hear that. It tightened up the low end in here. It's pretty nice. Now the room needs to get retuned for the treatment in here because it definitely feels a little darker in here now and not as bright. So that will all get fixed when I retune the speakers in here. But in the meantime, this is nice. Down here around 42 hertz, that is hanging out longer than I would like. Down that kind of like 40 to 50 range. but some of that might get fixed when I get this retuned and get this weird kind of peak that's going on there. I'm going to get that all taken care of and smoothed out. So it should all sort itself out in the end. But for now, I'm pretty happy with things. I don't know what's going on at 120 hertz. That might be something I will want to address in the future somehow. But again, I want to see what happens with this when I get all the fabric up and once I get the whole thing retuned, because this might be a totally different story once all of that is done. Okay, you can see behind me, I got the first bit of fabric up, and that was a pain. That was not fun at all. If you're making panels, it is so much easier to do this on the ground. Let me just tell you, if I was doing this over again, I think I would have made a frame and put the fabric across that and done it all, but it's too late now, so I'm just stuck doing this. But first one is up. Now you go do the other side. So I thought I had filmed more of the final construction process, but I didn't. So here is a look at kind of the finished traps. After I got the fabric up, I just put some like white trim pieces up there. I had originally tried to miter these so that at the corners they were going to look a little better, but I'm not great at building things, so they didn't really come out because you have to have square things to do mitering, and these are not square. This is they look okay. I'm okay with how they turned out, but you know, I am not a professional carpenter by any stretch of the imagination. Wanted to give you some of my final thoughts on this and take a look at the kind of final measurements a little bit to show you how the whole thing turned out. All in all, I'm pretty satisfied. The room, from what I can hear in here, it definitely tightened up the low end, that was a big part of the goal for me in doing this. So it was a success on that end. On the building side, these were a lot more complicated to build than any of the acoustic panels I've done before. And I think part of the problem for me in doing this, since I don't really build things, I kind of approached this the way I used to build Legos when I was a kid, where you would just kind of make it up as you go. And when you're doing stuff like this and putting stuff up high, probably not the best approach. If I was going to do this over again, I would have built the basic frames that hold the insulation. I would have built that on the ground. That way I would have had better bracing across the whole thing. It would have been square to begin with. I could have done the miter cuts for the trim. The trim would have looked better. It would have been a little better aesthetically, but functionally, these work fine. I don't think that would have changed. I put some LED strip lights on there. They're okay. I kind of like them and I kind of don't. I really need probably some diffusion, maybe like diffusion strips to really get them to look the way I would like, but they were cheap and I thought, why not? I'll try it out. I mean, I can even see right now they're kind of starting to fall down in places, so I didn't get them stuck up there that great. But, you know, for a first round, kind of to see how it looks, they're not bad. Now, in terms of what happened sonically in here, like I said, the low end, it definitely tightened up. I could feel that. The room also dried up just a little bit, which made it feel a little darker in here. And I had to recalibrate the whole thing, and I was kind of on the fence about the recalibration, but I've done a few mixes in here now with the recalibration, and the translation is really good. In some ways, it's translating a little bit better than it did before, I think, which is interesting to me. So I may retune things again at some point. I did the EQing in here with SonarWorks, which is what I've always liked to do in the past, but I may go in and manually do it because I've got all the stuff to measure and do it that way. I like using SonarWorks or Sound ID reference. I've always had really good results with it, and usually it's faster for me to do it that way. But this time, I may go back on that. We'll see. I'm gonna try and live with it for a few more months and see what happens. But so far, I probably will end up keeping it, though, because the translation's been really good. And if I'm just sitting in here listening and not thinking about it, it sounds good. So I want to show you a little bit with the measurements of the results here. And I'm going to use the spectrogram for this because I think it'll show the resonances a lot more easily. Like, to me, this is easier to look at than the waterfall. The waterfall looks cool, but this sort of gives me a better view, I think. So ideally, what we would see here is across the frequency spectrum, everything would decay at the same rate. Basically, as we're getting into that, like we're going from this kind of orange color, which would be the peak, like the loudest part of the frequency, and then we're getting into that like blue kind of thing. That's the sound decaying. And ideally from, 16K really, because above that, I mean, come on, we're getting into dog whistle territory. But, 16K down to like 40 hertz, ideally that would all decay at the same time. And this would all just be pretty flat. But as it is right now, you can see there are these resonances here. So like there's this one at 40, right down here around like 57, 65-ish, 80 hertz. And then there's this thing up here at 121. I'm not sure about that one. That one is a little strange to me. Probably need to investigate a little more, or maybe you've got an idea and you can just leave it down in the comments. Now, if I go to the after on this, you can see that all of those frequencies that were extended, they just get shorter. So if we go, here's the before, here's the after. And I can hear that, and it definitely tightened up. Now, I've still got this issue, like I was saying, around 120, which is what's interesting to me. I mean, before it was a little bit longer, so it's definitely done a little bit to help with that, but it's still kind of an issue in there. The big issue that remains, though, is right here around, 40, 42 hertz, 43 hertz, somewhere in there. This didn't really change at all. Now, there's this other stuff down here, 30 hertz and below. I'm not too worried about that stuff because there's not a lot musically that's going to go on down there. I mean, 5-string bass gets down to about 32, I guess, if memory serves anyways. But the low E on a standard bass guitar is 40 hertz. So right there, that's that note. And I would love to get that tightened up to be closer to everything else. One of the theories I have on this, why this is such a tough frequency, is the wavelength for 42 hertz. It's about 27, 28 feet, somewhere in there. And I think that is probably right about the distance from like that wall right there, this wall here, to the front of my house. So that might be kind of a standing wave. And treating that kind of stuff down that low, it's tough. So I may try and build some more treatment at some point because I keep making more treatment every time I think I'm done. I end up building more. I'm not sure yet how exactly to address that. If you've got ideas, though, if you've got things I should look at, and it's simple and easy to build, let me know. Leave a comment below and give me ideas. And, there's something else you think I should do. I mean, hey, why not? I'll look at it and investigate it. But the reality is, for me at this point, this room sounds really good. I'm getting into the nitty gritty and really getting picky with some of this stuff at this point. But, I'm always chasing after trying to make things the best I possibly can. So I'm sure at some point I will go after that. I mean, right now, like I said, mixes are translating out of here great. My clients have been happy. I get nervous about touching things when everybody's happy and I'm not getting a ton of revisions on things. But, I'm always chasing after trying to make things as good as I can. So I'll probably try and do something at some point. But for now, I think it's in really good shape. Room has definitely improved a little bit. This has not been like a massive change, but it did tighten up the low end, and that made me really happy because low end, I love low end. Anyways, there you go. If you've got questions, ideas, thoughts on acoustics, let me know. I'm no acoustician, but I know more than enough to be dangerous at this point, and I'm really happy. So you got questions, let me know. I can answer them the best I can. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.